Welcome to Agile Network India April event, day 2, post-lunch session. We are about to begin with Kolkata chapter. We'll be having a wonderful panel discussion on a very interesting topic, AI in banking. Before we start the session, let me thanks Agile Network India founding sponsor Innovation Roots. Innovation Roots is a leading consulting and training service provider, helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. For more information, request you to visit Innovation Roots website www.innovationroots.com. Do's and don'ts: join 5 minutes before the start time. Use high quality speakers or headphones for better sound quality. Please keep your microphones muted and video disabled as this may cause disturbance and bandwidth issue. Questions will be taken via chat box. Please enter your questions in the chat box. At the end of the session, the facilitator or moderator will help and read out a few questions to the speaker as and the time is available. Please fill the feedback form after the event to help us understand more about the event. We appreciate your cooperation. This particular session will be moderated by Jibendu. Jibendu, who is a director at Cognizant Technology Solutions. I would request Jibendu to come over and introduce himself and take over from here. Over to you, Jibendu.
Thank you very much, Prashant. Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to welcome all of you to our panel discussion for the day, AI in banking. Now, it would have been better if we could meet face to face, but because of the pandemic, we have to do this virtually because learning cannot stop. Jibendu, I'm working with Cognizant for the last 17 years. I'm in the IT industry for the last 17 years, and I'm with Cognizant for about 12 years. And I have been actually serving mainly the banking and financial services sector. And I'll be a moderator for the session. And today we are honored to have amongst us a very distinguished set of panelists. Before I get started, I would like to first introduce them. Prashant, if you could move to the next slide. Our first panelist is Sonali Bhattacharya, who is an AVP with Mindtree. Sonali has over 23 years of experience in the IT industry, playing a multitude of roles. And she has led product platform initiatives in automation and AI space. And Sonali is presently leading delivery of digital programs that impacts customer business landscape. We can move over to the next slide, please, Prashant. Next, we have Purna. Purna has extensive experience of technology, business development, IT consulting, delivery, and new solutions development. And he has authored award-winning papers for FS Tech, white papers on distributed Agile, and has conducted several speaking sessions. Next, please. Yeah. Next, we have Bitan. Bitan is a senior vice president of Siam Software. Bitan has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry with various, and he has played in various key roles, particularly in the Asia Pacific region. And he has closed major software deals in the India and the APAC region. We can move to the next slide, please, Prashant. Prashant, yeah. Next, we have Dripto. Dripto has the perfect blend of academic and professional experience, and he's an assistant professor with IIT Kharagpur. And he has worked with some of the big four consulting firms and banks in managerial and consulting roles. And he has vast research experience in India and abroad, particularly in the area of economics and statistics. Now, I think, Prashant, we can stop the screen sharing. Yeah, let us now move to our discussion for the afternoon, and that is AI in banking. Artificial intelligence, as we all know, is that field of computer science which actually helps machines think like humans and perform certain tasks. And in today's world, AI is almost everywhere. AI has permeated our homes, right? So we have smart assistants like Alexa, Siri. We have face recognition softwares on our mobile phones. We have print recognition softwares on our laptops. So AI is almost everywhere, even though we are not conscious about it. It is almost everywhere. But in today's discussion, we will particularly concentrate on the ground realities and the implementations that we see in the banking space. Now, in order to get started, let me start by asking Sonali uh, about some of the top business drivers of AI and some of the interesting implementations that she has come across and what kind of ROI they have actually yielded. Sonali, over to you.
Thanks, Jibendu. And I think warm good afternoon. It's already hot outside and it's afternoon session. Being the first speaker on such a serious topic, let me get started by saying that, as much as we think that artificial intelligence is all around and machine is trying to get or creep into our lives in a very weird fashion and taking control of our lives, to be precise. It's very important for all of us to understand that machines can't do anything that human can't. So I think machine is just trying to kind of do it little precision wise better, and at points where there's a bit of a scale that comes into consideration when human intelligence possibly would feel a huge pressure to comprehend a set of things together. Machine might be doing a little better job than human. However, the fundamentals of what we see machine is doing, whether it is observing, whether it is collecting information or processing information, I'm sure the audience today definitely would understand and would echo with me that there's nothing happening beyond that. It's just that we have possibly put it in a way and that it can do it faster, and we have given some computing power for them to make it happen in less time. So with that little bit of a simple background, and I know most of you possibly who is listening to this more as audience, and also like learned panelists who are with me, I think it's a very hard topic when it comes to the real execution. While on the face of it and our day to day, when we are kind of really interfacing certain things, people who understand technology do see it in a different way, but people who are really not into the technology world as an user, they would feel sometimes comfortable, sometimes very disoriented, because things would be happening which are a little beyond their control. Sometimes to their annoyance, sometimes it doesn't meet expectation. So that's AI in the real life, in the daily stuff that is happening around us. And it covers almost every industry. As much as today, I think there's a focus for us to have a kind of a conversation around banking as one of the key industries. Now, saying so, I would like to kind of share the way I had seen AI in some of the implementation programs that I have been fortunate enough to be part of some of the AI platform development. Now, not getting into nitty-gritties of programs or how those kind of platforms got developed, it is very important for us to understand when we speak about an AI program, who is this, getting, done for? Who is going to be the beneficiary? And if you look at an ecosystem and from an enterprise lens, you would see a lot of, personas or profiles who are in the landscape and for whom this kind of programs are getting done. It could be your end customers, as in the person on the street. It could be your enterprise end user sitting within your ecosystem and trying to do certain things. It could be even your own development team who has built the platforms that you are using in a day-to-day occasion. And of course, if you kind of cut across all these personas, they are also lying in an ecosystem. Today it's a normal world. Tomorrow it's a pandemic world. Third day is something different. Today is a world which has a social aspect to it. Tomorrow that could be really taken to a very different ecosystem of what we are calling today as metaverse. And these are all coexisting, and everything is happening together. Our environment, which is changing very fast, technology which is moving very fast, and they all have their own speeds, and nobody is really going slow. At the same point of time, voluminous data is getting generated, and we are trying to process them to the benefit of it, and we are trying to make our machines more intelligent to get there. If we quickly peep into the last 2 decades and kind of concentrate on the first decade, uh, you would basically see that we were very busy building some tools, technologies, platforms, which were getting more oriented to do what we think the machine should do. So in very simple words, we would call them as, systems that do. So we tell them, if it is X, if it is Y, please do Z. Okay. However, some of the levers that I spoke of, whether it's a social stuff, whether it's a environmental stuff, whether it's a technology stuff, and there could be many situational stuff in an enterprise ecosystem. And if you consider all of these, in some permutation combination, what you would finally land up is that X plus Y always necessarily need not give you Z. Okay, it could be Z1 to Zn. Okay, and that's where possibly we have seen over the years human intervention had played a very big role. Sometimes it was subjective too. Okay, and we have tried to kind of emulate that layer, which we today call as the layer of intelligence, as in systems that can think. Okay, which is where artificial intelligence plays a very, very big role. And there are so many components of it, not really getting into the depth of technology and the tools and the products that are available in market, but even for that matter, the areas where it will kind of impact. Essentially, it helps us really, really get little closer to not that defined Z as the outcome, but it could be a Z1 to a Zn. That's the variation that we see in different industries, uh, which is coming into play, and have been fortunate to kind of work on a few such programs, which was either intended for end users, mm, very simple, and I'm sure all of us would have seen various applications where, chatbots pop up last 7, 8, 10 years. That had been a huge area of investment, right? People just come up and speak with somebody. Okay. However, on the face of it, while it is just a speech, or a small FAQ, conversation, there are enterprises who have gone really, really step ahead to kind of make it really feel like not a monotonous cookie cutter A plus B is equal to C kind of a model, but A plus B with, many environmental stuff. You are really writing something which are really not proper English, the texty English that we are used to today in WhatsApp world. Okay, and you're trying to communicate a problem. Okay, and you're not really writing everything about your problem, but in a very sketchy fashion trying to tell. That's where you would have already heard about things that we call all natural language processing comes into play. And as much as I speak about this word, okay, it is not some simple thing. You'll have to go and coach somebody to get to that point. Okay, have been fortunate to kind of work in, set of programs in that space. Have also kind of, seen such kind of programs where we are elevating the entire software industry who supports multitude of applications for our customers, which is what in very layman's term we would call it as, AI ops. As in, you have an operations that is running. How do you put AI into it, intelligence into it? So it's like, in simple terms, lights on business is happening, right? 10 things are happening, and hence your business is running. Okay, if something falters, there's a process to it, and there are interventions and points where human would come in today. Is there a mechanism to kind of bring in artificial intelligence into the whole play to ensure that even if, any human is not there and the problem occurs, it all happens very seamlessly. It could be as simple as, in today's world, even in for, few seconds, you have an electricity going out in your house. Is the utility industry all equipped to say that in a press of a button from your mobile, all things happen in the order it has to happen to make your electricity back in few seconds, so that you are out of your discomfort zone? In similar means, if you really get into a retail shop, are we all in, okay, to kind of say that when I step into the shop, certain things that I need for sure when I get into the shop on a Friday of a third week, okay, and the shop knows by itself, it's an intelligent shop, really, really helps me get the best deal out of it when I get into it. Okay, and then when I move the needle from this kind of industries, utility retail, to say banking, and I'm sure there are many stalwart and experienced practitioners in the call today, in this session today, who would kind of give you insights. But the way I have seen it is, for a banking industry or some of the similar industries of that nature, there are certain timelines which are very important, right? Certain activities have to happen at 8 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the night. Faltering of that, okay, means a huge brand loss, okay, more than anything. And it costs, this, dollars that, go for a toss. So how is machine equipped, to get there? There are so many things that can go wrong too. As much as human can go wrong, machine can also go wrong, because end of the day, machine is nothing but an educated entity, to be very precise. And in this kind of programs, these are two aspects that I felt, Jibendu and all, that one needs to be very, very clear about, that when we are placing machine in the ecosystem, whether we give it a name or we don't give it a name, it has an entity, it has a persona of its own. Okay, our ability to ensure that as much as I would have given the honor to a human being as a peer or a colleague in the ecosystem, do I embrace a machine to that level? And do I understand the language in which I'm kind of interacting with the machine as an individual, is one area that generally gets overlooked when we bring in AI into the ecosystem. I really didn't dig into the statistics aspect of it, because if you look at the maturity of AI in different enterprises, you will first see after systems that do the first, where AI comes in, is systems that think. But even thinking can go wrong, and that's when statistics starts playing its role. Not getting into too heavyweight loaded terminologies from statistics. In very simple words, as much as human can make a wrong decision, machine can also take decisions which are not all that correct. In terms of statistics, you can call that a type 1 error or type 2 error. You can have several types of I would say algorithms that you would have put in play based on your data types and how things keep changing, levers that impact your business. Your algorithms would also go for a change to ensure that the outcome that you are looking from a machine is tuned to the time that you are living. Okay, so there's a cost of maintenance and nurturing of machine itself, as much as we would nurture ourselves as human. So in short, and putting things in nutshell, I didn't deep dive into the technology aspect of it, which is like plethora of it, and it's just growing. Okay, and what is great today is not as great tomorrow, because of things changing, and not just technically but also conceptually, and how society is embracing certain things one more than the other. However, when it comes to AI, we have to first kind of create a mind share that we are inviting machine as an entity into our life and ecosystem. There has to be a level of tolerance when we speak about machine. We also have to kind of ensure, as an enterprise end user, that there has to be some kind of a change management in the whole ecosystem in a very lucid way within enterprise users, and also people who are going to use and get benefited out of it, so that there is a proper embracement of such kind of programs. I take a pause here, and I'm sure I'll join in the conversation subsequently.
Thank you, Sonali. I think you brought a very, very important point, that machines that are actually operating in this landscape will have to be treated as entities, and they also have a persona, right? So while we heard about the immense possibility AI offers in different industries, it will be particularly interesting to know how the banking industry or the banking and financial services sector is embracing this machine or this individual to unlock the revenue growth potential, or maybe minimizing operating expenses or automating manually intensive processes. I'll next go to Purna. So Purna, based on your experience, and you have all been in the banking and financial services sector for quite some time now. So how do you think the banking and financial services sector is embracing the AI powered solutions, and what would be some of the top 3-4 use cases that you have actually seen, where structured and unstructured data is being used by financial services organizations to take decisions? Puna, over to you.
Thank you, Jibendu and Sonali. Very elegantly spoken, right? I think great points that you brought up. McKinsey did some research around AI and use cases around banking, and what they have said, that there is $1 trillion worth of value to be unlocked by using AI in banking, right? And that is huge potential. And we know, right, banks move first wherever there is money to be made, right? That's core business to the banks. On both sides of the equation, both in terms of revenue generation as well as decreasing cost, there are AI use cases. McKinsey again does a global survey every year, trying to figure out adoption of AI across industries. And within finance, they found that at least 60% of their respondents have implemented some AI, right? And the top 3 use cases that came out, 36% were using robotic process automation and AI embedded as part of that, so which is automating all of the operational tasks. which, to Sonali's point, what she said was an efficiency play, right? Where banks are able to minimize effort, and then they're able to use that, right? What they also found are two segments, right? Marketing and sales, which are catered towards customer servicing and personalization at scale. They felt the potential is there for about 300 plus sort of $1 billion that you could save or you could generate through applying AI to those functions. And the second one after that was around risk and fraud detection and so on, right? That you could save money there. Um, I'll give you some example. I mean, I'm pretty much a sort of a student in this field, right? I do a lot of research trying to understand the trends and how they impact and where the sort of implementation is moving towards. If you think about implementation, Deutsche Bank are using AI within their wealth management platform, right? So they've got a sort of offering which is called Next Best Offer, where they analyze portfolio using AI and then recommend funds to their clients, right? And then they look at analyst movements, and if an analyst has downgraded a particular fund or a stock, they would recommend to their clients to either exit that position or increase stake in that position, right? So that's on client servicing side of things. Similarly, they've also got in financial crime, right? They're using AI to figure out patterns and which patterns would maybe trigger instances where they feel there may be a fraud, or it may be a financial transaction which is not approved by the authorities, and that would get flagged up. But the best one that I found that gives sort of a holistic framework of where AI use cases are moving is actually JP Morgan Chase, right? For JP Morgan has an AI center of excellence, and there's great material out there you could read. For them, AI is focused around four areas: data and cryptology being the first, learning from experience. How do you codify the experience that the humans have, that the agents have, and then sort of start driving trends from there on? How do you drive more explainability and interpretability from the data that they are gathering, and send that back not just to the end customers, right? In terms of again, as an example, I am a Bank of America customer, right? I have Erica, which is an AI assistant, chatbot assistant on my mobile app, and she generates, insights in terms of what my spending patterns are, what my sort of digital subscriptions are, and whether they're going up, going down, or they're too many, right? And the fourth one so that's the customer side of, I was saying, explainability, but also to the regulators, right? You could use data to explain your transactions again back to the regulator. And then last one being ethics and fairness. So the four focus areas for JP Morgan: data, cryptology, learning from experience, explainability, interpretability, ethics and fairness. And the six areas that they are kind of driving: three on cost, three on revenue. On cost, they're looking at anomaly detection, which is similar to what I spoke about earlier in terms of what Deutsche Bank are doing, about intelligent pricing. So this is in terms of pricing models, catered to a specific customer, personalized. See, this sort of pricing, credit recovery kind of grew when COVID hit, right? A lot of these firms, in terms of their recovery, in terms of their credit card debt, started giving these personalized offerings using data, using AI, right? So that they were able to personally help the customer, appropriate to their situation, right? And the third one that they are using is around document processing. Of course, tons of documentation around banking. Some of it is digital, some of it is still paper. But then how do you start driving more sort of digital processing of that documentation, but also in terms of driving analytics out of it, right? Revenue enhancement, quantitative client intelligence. How can you take sort of data across the different product lines and start to cross-sell, upsell? How do you have virtual assistants, which could go across robo-advisory on wealth and investment, but also in terms of product offers within your mobile app as you join, or other digital channels, right? Even online banking. And then how do you use news from aggregators, right? It was interesting to hear Sonali talk about different sort of contexts or different ecosystems, right? That you're in a COVID world, you're in a normal world. And there is a very interesting analogy. There's a podcast on AI in finance, which actually talks about a spaghetti play and a pizza play, right? It's lunch hour, so I'll kind of talk about a little bit about food, right? And how this correlates into AI in finance. The idea being, for banks, spaghetti is a vertical integration, right? So let's say if you want to do only chatbots, right, for customer servicing. So then you've got a vertical integration, you've got a topping on your pizza, which integrates with your crust. So there's a vertical integration, but it's not speaking to, let's say, a pineapple topping you have somewhere else, right? And then the ploy is that you should have your AI proposition more as a spaghetti, which is an integrated dish, right? So really, your toppings should be correlated, cohesive, because more and more what's happening in banking is that you have integrations that are coming in, internal integrations within different, and we know, I mean, whoever's from banking would know it's famously siloed, right? So integrations within the divisions of the bank, but also with external players, right? With fintech, you've got to be more and more open and be able to integrate, right? So you've got to be a spaghetti in your financial play, in your AI play, and I think most banks are. And almost every like I said, every major bank has or is using AI, at least in front office and in their customer servicing, in middle office in robotic process automation, in back office in document processing, decision making, etc. So that I would say are the key areas, Jibendu. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Purna, for sharing your insights around the plethora of use cases that we have in the banking space. What will be particularly interesting to know about is how the Indian banking sector is actually responding to this new trend. A recent analyst report shows that around 57% of the Indian banking financial services organizations think AI is going to give them a competitive advantage over their peers. So I'll next go to Bitan. Bitan, you have been in the Asia Pacific region for quite some time. You have been operating in this region. So could you just share your insights around how the Indian BFS sector is actually adopting AI and how AI is actually being perceived, particularly in India? Bitan, over to you. You have to unmute yourself, Bitan.
So to start off, let me first tell you what are we heading towards actually in the AI market. Actually, uh, uh, till 2020, the global market touched around $3.8 billion, and that is for only AI. AI in banking. That includes AI and AI in banking. Now, the forecast for totally the forecast for till 2030, the global market is going to touch around for AI itself, AI and AI banking. It is going to touch around $60 billion. And as far as the Indian market is concerned, Indian market is quite huge, and we are planning to probably the Indian IT industry and the software industry is planning to touch around $5 to $6 billion. So having said that, there are various number of bank players, there are various products. We have number of competitive players in the AI space. Now, coming down to the core banking system, core banking software, many of the banks, typically there are three major core banking software which are used in the Indian scenario. Like as far as the private banks, some of the private banks use the Finacle, which is being supplied by Infosys. We have a software called Banks, which is being developed by TCS. We have another software called uh, that is FlexCube, which is being developed by Oracle. Now these products, they are not AI enabled. Most of the products are not AI enabled, and they need to be integrated with this solution with AI. So the problem is, see, during the pre-AI period, 7 to 8 years back, what used to happen is when there was no AI and when the AI was not being implemented, the customers used to be dependent totally on the call centers. And when the customer experience, the chatbots, where you're talking of chatbots, they were not implemented in those days. So prior to that and post that period, we find the AI, these products were not implemented within the, like Infosys never had any AI solution to enable it in it. So they had to go for an external product. Now what we have is, we are focusing mainly the AI market, the banking industry is focusing mainly to integrate the external AI products, within the software. Some of the softwares like Temenos globally, they have an AI enabled product, but Infosys enables, Infosys integrates with another AI product depending upon whatever solution they need, whether it is uh, chatbots, whether it is fraud detection. So banks is also doing that. That is TCS. TCS do not have their own AI solution. So coming down to the market point, market size that we have, as far as customer experience is concerned, we have an 83% of Indian banks having identified enhancing customer experience as a top driver for AI-enabled use cases. We have in India around 12 public sector banks, 22 public sector, 12 public sector banks, 22 private sector banks, and 56 rural banks. And it's a huge market for AI. Banks are implementing omni-channels driven chatbots, which are integrated with WhatsApp, Teams, CRM systems, and emails. Banks are focusing on the front office customer experience, as already told by Purnananda, for front office, risk for mid office, and data for mainly back office. I would come down to a case like State Bank of India. State Bank of India, what they have implemented an intelligent assistant. They have a product called Banks, which is core banking software, which they have is Banks. They have what they have done is they have for this they have implemented an SBI intelligent assistant for controlling their inquiries. It is an AI powered smart chat assistant that addresses customer inquiries instantly and helps them with everyday banking tasks like human does. So there are huge number of inquiries which are coming up and they are this AI enabled solution. What they are doing is they are handling the around 10,000 inquiries per second, or 864 million a day in a day. There is another bank called HDFC, which they have implemented chatbot from Ava, and that is basically, this solution is from a company called Senseforth. It is a Bangalore-based startup organization, and they have implemented this solution by integrating with FlexCube. But FlexCube Oracle has its own. FlexCube is basically from Oracle, and Oracle has its own AI enabled solution. FlexCube has it, but what I feel is for different type of AI enabled solutions, like whether it is fraud detection, whether it is chatbots, you can integrate an external AI solution with your core banking system at any point of time, even if you have an AI-enabled solution like Temenos. Kotak Mahindra Bank has implemented Kia, and Kia is basically, if you type in your account number in WhatsApp, what you find is typically when you get configured with WhatsApp and your account number, this chatbot, what it does, if you type in the account number and you type in certain intelligent questions, the answer automatically comes up. So the Kotak Mahindra Bank has implemented Kia. Andhra Bank has implemented a chatbot like Abhi, and most of these banks are implementing different kind of chatbots. So that is what I find like the Indian scenario is.
Okay, thank you, Bitan. Thanks for sharing your insights, and it's encouraging to know that some of the Indian banks with which we have accounts are also jumping into the bandwagon, and very soon, we might also be we are already, or probably we will experience something in the near future. And I'm sure some of these implementations that we talked about must have got accelerated because of the biggest crisis all of us are in, which is COVID-19. So my next question will be to Dripto. So Dripto, based on your experience, and I know you have been a part of some of the AI implementations for banks. Also, So based on your experience, how do you think, or which are the particular use cases that particularly got accelerated because of the pandemic in the banking sector? And what is the scenario like, because of the pandemic, and how did it change the space actually? Dripto, over to you.
Yeah, firstly, hello everybody. Am I clearly audible?
Yes,
Am I
Dripto, you are
clearly?
clear. Yep, yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So as far as the use
Right.
cases are concerned, I think Mr. Singh covered almost most of them. Firstly, if you look at the front office, you have these AI-driven chatbots and KYC KYC, applications which make the process smoother. But what I will talk about in details is the the banking service which is being enhanced by the data which is captured. Now, what the pandemic has done is it has led to more data. Okay, more transactions, more online transactions have happened after the pandemic set in, which implies that the banks were sitting on more data, more transaction level data, which in turn implies that, let's say, applications like risk management, credit scoring, or uh, financial crime threat mitigation, these kind of activities became far more efficient in the post pandemic, since we were sitting on more data. So I'll give an example, since most of these cases have been talked about. I'll give an example of the financial crime threat mitigation or fraud detection project, which I was part of while I was working with HSBC. So if you allow me, can I get into the technicalities a little bit? Because I think as far as the
Go ahead.
Hawkeye view is concerned, it has
Go ahead.
been talked about. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what happens usually is, just to make the audience a little more aware of how these projects are executed. Firstly, so let's say the way it used to happen before AI came into the picture as far as fraud detection is concerned, it was largely manual. Okay. So all the transaction features of the customers were looked into by an investigating agency, and if there was any pattern which was insinuating towards some anomaly, then an investigation, a formal investigation, a manual investigation will happen, and that was insanely costly for the banks. And that is why a more data science driven approach came into the picture. And how did it happen? So I'll talk about the technicalities in order to throw light on how it has evolved over the last few years. So the way it used to happen, and the way it happens with many banks even now, is the following. So you will take all the customer. So let's say you have one particular customer, and you have all the transactional details. Let's say daily transactional details. Now, what is that? That is nothing but a time series data of an individual for 365 days. Let's say you take data for a year. Okay, a credit and debit transactions. Thus, every customer is nothing but a bunch of observations, a bunch of time series observations. And then there are a few customers who have been already detected to be fraudulent. So what's the activity? What's the objective of this exercise? You're going to look at a time series, and the machine should be able to predict whether this particular time series is uh, problematic, quote unquote problematic, or whether it's hinting towards some financial crime. Okay, so it was quintessentially the classification algorithm, which, like a decision tree or a logistic regression kind, which was used in fraud detection largely. Now, what has happened nowadays is, now we are looking for network effects. Okay, maybe since the criminals have become smarter, looking at individual transaction levels might not give us the entire picture. Okay, so what we are looking for now is network patterns. So that is why we are moving from the traditional relational databases to graphical databases like Neo4j. Okay, so that's the new frontier which is being touched upon. So that's one kind of application which I see happening more and more, and fraud detection is what I just thought I'll touch upon. And of course, there are other applications too. I think Mr. Singh also mentioned portfolio management. Nowadays, we have these quantitative funds. Okay, most Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, all of them have quant funds. A classic example is Renaissance Technology, which is founded by a mathematician called Jim Simmons, which runs entirely on algorithm, mathematics-based funds. Okay, so you have portfolio management, you have fraud detection, and of course the front office stuff.
Okay, thank you, Dripto, for sharing your insights. It is interesting to know that AI is actually solving so many problems, and it appears to be the panacea of all the problems we have. But definitely, when organizations implement AI, they are facing different challenges, right? Next, I would like to go to Sonali, and Sonali, if you could actually share what do you think, based on your experience, are the top 3-4 challenges confronting organizations that are actually trying to implement AI solutions?
Yeah, so interesting conversation, and I understand some of the programs that are getting kind of executed in banking at this point of time too. In line with all that was discussed till this point and some of my experiences put together, let me speak about three things that comes as a I would say the top three areas where I feel generally such programs face a lot of challenge. The first one definitely is the readiness of the program. Okay, as much as there are a lot of change management initiatives that would be taken care of. Sometimes when you build such things for your end consumer, you will not really have a mechanism to go about it. Okay, thing is, like every such initiative, as we were hearing, has a root. Okay, whether you are doing it for operational efficiency or you are doing for business benefit or customers ecstasy. Now you don't go and coach your customer that when you get to see this, this is how you have to behave. Okay, we have often seen that when such kind of programs are rolled out, and they are meant for customers. Okay, and sticking to the chat bot related conversation which came up in multiple project examples, it's very difficult to really suffice to all your customer in one go. If you look at banks have different clusters of consumers, right? Having a smartphone doesn't entitle end users to be the best users of smartphone. Okay, at the same point of time, high-end end users are possibly really demanding much more than what possibly a basic chatbot would do for some of the banks even today within Indian context. So if you really look at the spectrum of users that you have today in your country, okay, and I'm just kind of drilling down to that point to get more closer to the reality, I think there's a huge amount of challenge to really meet every cluster and their demands. Okay, and not to forget, I'm not speaking about the education of really using web technologies. There are people of different ages also, right? So how do they reciprocate to that? Unless you really take those individuals, your consumers, to a level where you're really getting the ROI of what you have invested, you will never get to the outcome that you are looking for. You keep spending money, but you'll still not get there. Okay, this is one of the big challenge that I have foreseen, and possibly people are going through. The second is predominantly technical, because as I stated, like the technology behind, and of course the ecosystem which is driving those technology, and this is fast changing. Now, by the time you have rolled out something and you are expecting some benefits out of it, the ecosystem has changed to something different. At least if not for 100% of your consumers, enterprise end users, possibly a portion of them. And it's very difficult to keep up to the pace of that. And on top of it, if you really don't have the right level of enterprise, uh, I would say individuals, SMEs who are driving, and guardrails set within your organization, the architectural decisions always may not be the perfect one. And there is no one answer, but there could be the best suit answer for a given enterprise, which is a very important decision making point. which I say sometimes feel because of multiple stakeholders in its given ecosystem, a learning curve that is involved, okay, within the entire, community who is going to build it. They all don't come together at the same point of time with, the same outcome. So there are conflicts, okay. And this is also a second challenge that I've seen in this kind of programs. And the third and the final one, which is very, very important for some industries for sure, if not all, is how do the policies, governance models, contractual models, okay, the boundaries of give and take, okay, of this all get set in an AI world, okay. As simple as I'm sure this is not something that I'm stating in this call first time. Many people would have read it. If tomorrow a driverless car goes and hits somebody, who is going to be penalized? The car manufacturer, or the person who actually kind of got into it, or who? Okay, I mean, this whole contract, and there are so many point of views as we are discussing today. It's not that it's an unsolved problem today, but if you have to look and prorate this thought, tomorrow your entire insurance industry will also be dictated by how you kind of create your governance tomorrow. Tomorrow your local traffic rules and policies would also get influenced by how things will happen tomorrow. So it's not just one but a chain of industries who would get impacted not only by their policies, the contractual obligation, the whole trust ecosystem that you would build in that. If something goes wrong, who holds the accountability? Okay? Because end of the day, you can go and shout over a machine, but it's not going to respond, right? So you still need somebody to stand up and take that accountability. Those things really need to come out very clean and clear over span of time. And Jibendu, this is not a very easy road, neither something that can happen overnight. I'm sure as we progress technically and also graduate as a society as a whole, these things will evolve. It's going to be certainly a new world, and I guess some of these challenges will slowly start defining the world that we are going to leave tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Sonali. I think that you brought a very, very important topic, and that is about accountability and trust. Definitely, when we are using AI solutions, how would the customers trust the solutions, right? Whether the solution is explainable, right? And it's so tough, right? When AI is actually taking decisions, let's say credit decisions, let's say we have a neural network based algorithm that actually decides whether to give credit to a person, right? It's not so easy to explain this to the customers, right? And when we talk about accountability and trust, definitely the regulatory aspects also come into picture. So my next question for Purna would be, Purna, how do you think the banking and financial services sector, how do you think they are actually tackling this trust and accountability question, and how the regulations are actually shaping up around it? Purna, over to you.
Yeah. No, I think fair point, right? And what I've seen is typical to maybe also blockchain here. Technology is outpacing regulation, right? And I think what this has brought about is an incredible collaboration within the financial ecosystem, right? So you would see, JP Morgan sponsors a forum where it not only brings other industry participants but also regulators into the mix to talk about AI. Fairness is a word that gets used very often, right? And typically, you would not associate fairness as a concept with regulation, but that gets spoken a lot about in the context of AI. So few things that they are doing is leading the conversation, trying to shape the conversation, not sort of trying to be passive about it, right? Bringing all the participants together so that they can form a common view, a common consensus. I think one thing is clear, that we are all learning in terms of adopting this, right? I mean, being transparent about it, the banks themselves in terms of how they are using this technology, how the model is getting constructed, which aspects are being used is very important. And banks are open, right? Like I said, which is why I spoke about JP Morgan Chase openly talk about AI Center of Excellence. So do Deutsche Bank, right? In terms of, or so does Bank of America, so does Wells Fargo, in terms of which specific aspects of the service are AI led, and then how does the model work, right? See, FINRA is obviously a regulatory authority in the US. If you go and look at their site, they give guidelines as well, right? And they speak about having explainability as a key consideration as you build AI models out. Human in the loop or human on the loop gets discussed. So how do you ensure that there are boundaries where an AI model may trigger a decision which could always be led by a human review? How do you ensure there's proper data governance? And you communicate that, right? Not only ensure that there is data governance, which ensures that data is once sort of protected, the consumer knows which data is getting recorded versus which is not, what is being used in the model, and then there is no bias in that data, right? When it's specifically when it comes to credit decisioning, models and so on, or product offerings, that there is no bias incorporated. How do you ensure that and then communicate that, right? I think those aspects are important. It is also important for banks to establish supervisory control systems. And this would be, see, we spoke about banks and the silos, right? So for AI, you would need to have a cross-functional technology governance structure, which can moderate the use of cross-functional data, the reporting out, the decisioning of that, and a topic close to your and my heart, right? Whenever there's a model that gets implemented, you rigorously test it out to ensure that it is in line with existing models which are more human-led and there is parity in there. I think from a regulatory standpoint, a large part of it is in a proposal stage, is in a discussion stage. If you think about it geographically, European Union, unsurprisingly so, is probably leading the conversation. But then there are some discussions, at least AI principles in France, Germany, Hong Kong, Singapore, the UK, the US, which have started to bring out papers or principles for AI, right? And I'm going to speak about some of them, right? If you think about OECD have put out some, and G20 have put out some AI principles, which broadly kind of focus on what is the benefit to the people from AI, right? Are you respecting existing rule of law and human rights, transparency? Are you disclosing responsibly? Continuous risk assessment and accountability for the use of AI, right? Are these getting adhered to? And there are 5 common principles that each of these kind of frameworks kind of touch upon, right? How reliable is the solution? How sound is the solution? Who is taking the accountability? The point that Sonali brought out, transparency, ensuring fairness and ethics. That's kind of the focus area of the regulations. The EU paper, which I said, EU is the only one who can propose a regulatory framework, and their framework is centered around four points. Ensure that AI systems are safe and they respect existing law. Ensure that they are able to drive legal certainty, which is very important, that we're not all of a sudden change the regulatory processes around implementation of AI so that banks can continue to invest in AI. Ensure that these technologies are getting governed properly. And then, in the EU context, of course, they facilitate the development of a single market, right? So that's the most advanced. Most of the other ones, like I said, are in the principal stage, and I touched upon that. And I think the way the banks are addressing it is the right way to do so, which is being collaborative, which is being open, which is being sharing a lot of information out there and shaping the conversation.
Thank you, Purna. Thanks for that. And I understand that regulations are coming up, and it's really exciting to know that. And a lot of fintech firms and banks that are building these solutions will all be within the ambit of these regulations. Bitan, a very quick 30-minute answer on whether you see banks actually going for in-house solutions, or they are actually trying to purchase fintech solutions and integrating with their core banking solution. We are running out of time, Bitan, so just a 30-minute answer. Next, I'll go to Dripto for my last question. Over to you, Bitan. Bitan, you are on mute.
Sorry, 30 minutes or 30 seconds?
30 seconds, sorry, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, yeah.
No problem. See, as far as I wanted to tell few more things with the reference to Purna, because now there's a huge difference of the market. Currently, there's a huge difference in the market actually, as far as the AI/ML products are concerned, because pre-COVID and post-COVID. Because pre-COVID, it was the most of the banks were dependent on the call centers, and the customers were used to call up more and more the call centers, and they were dependent more on the call centers. But practically what happened, post COVID, the call centers were shut down, working from home, and banks were, and the banks started exploring for implementing the AIML products, the chatbots, and that is how the market grew in India, right? So, but coming down to the products, so the various banks in India, Axis Bank, HDFC Bank, and private banks like ICICI Bank, everyone is going in for AIML products. They're exploring for new opportunities. They're also, see, none of the banks are basically, see, most of them have implemented chatbots. So now they are looking forward for to implement the fraud detection and the others, and in fact the KYC part also. So I would rather like to elaborate more on the product side also. But if since you said that there is no time, there are a number of products. Temenos is one of the largest companies, the global companies, and they have around 3,000 global customers. Their product is not implemented in India. In fact, EY and Deloitte is one of the partners. In fact, Cognizant is one of the partners of Temenos. They have implemented AI with their core banking system in global banks. Most of the global banks, like in HSBC globally, ABN AMRO, Canadian Western Bank. So if that kind of a solution comes in India, comes to India, and the bank implements them, that is much better off, because rather than integrating another solution, because bank takes every CIO and CTO of the IT heads, they take a hell lot of time for POC, right? For implementing a new product. At least it takes 3 months to 6 months of time to implement a new product or integrate it with the APIs.
Got it, Bitan. Got it. One last question to Dripto. So now that we have actually talked about so much of AI, one big question remains whether we have the right talent, to actually implement these solutions. So Dripto, we hear so many courses from so many universities across the globe. What are the Indian universities doing, and how they are actually customizing or designing their courses around AI? Dripto, over to you.
Yeah. So I'll divide my response into three parts. So first is the courses which the Indian universities have floated in collaboration with all the learning platforms like Upgrad or Great Learning, which are targeted towards working professionals. Okay, so that's category one. Category two will be for younger professionals who can take up a full-time course. A classic example is the course which IIT Kharagpur, IIM Calcutta, and the Indian Statistical Institute have collaborated and have started. It's a 2-year course, 1 semester in each of the 3 institutes, and a 6-month internship, industry internship. So that's a new program which has become very popular in the last few years. So that's the second category, I'll say. And now talking about the third and probably the less cooler category, which are the traditional degrees in statistics, mathematics, or computer science. Now, from what I gather from having spoken to people in the industry and even to aspiring data scientists, data science or AI is often misconstrued to be a tool. Like knowing Python seems to be knowing data science, but that's not true. The theoretical underpinnings of data science lie in mathematics or statistics. So if somebody wants to ride the AI wave, a good degree in mathematics or a good degree in statistics should be good enough. So let us not be misled by the perception that we need to have AI programs per se. Okay, a good statistics degree is good enough, which can help you get a decent grasp of AI applications later on in life.
Thank you, Dripto. Thank you very much. So this brings us to the end of our session on AI and banking, and I know, we have actually crossed the stipulated time, so we may not be having time to take questions, but feel free to share your questions with us offline, and we will try to answer those. Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining this. Thank you very much.